Do you like your music loud? If so, you may need an amplifier to help with that, and I'm going to show you how to install one of these into any car. Today we are working on my 2006 VZ Commodore. Once we drive into the shed, we can get to work. Okay, to start this install, we're going to need a few parts, starting with an amplifier, of course. This one here is an 800 watt JVC one. It should do the job pretty well fine. It's a 4-channel one, which is perfect for what I'm needing. We're going to need a wiring kit. And in this wiring kit, we've got a power cable, a ground cable, fuse, trigger wire, all that fun stuff is included in there. But we still don't have everything in there. We still need some RCA cables. So we picked up a couple of them. And then also just a couple little ring terminals to connect your wires to your amplifier. And the next thing you might need is a amplifier mount. And I made this one out of a few scrap bits of wood because I'm going to bolt mine to the passenger seat mounts. Alright, that's all the parts we should need for this build, so let's get into it. I also had to use these 4-gauge ring terminals. Here are all the tools you need, let's list them out. So here are all the tools you're going to need. You're going to need a 16mm socket along with a ratchet, a Phillips head screwdriver, a T25 Torx screwdriver, a panel clip, just like a paneling tool, pliers, side cutters, Stanley knife, 10mm spanner to remove your battery, a 3mm Allen key if you're using those little circle gauge adapters that I used on the amplifier, a pen, wire crimpers, and these can also double as a wire stripper if you don't have these ones. These are automatic wire stripper, those make the job a lot easier. Then you have a lighter, some soldering iron, heat shrink, and a soldering iron. And that's all the tools you're going to need. Here is one side of the amp, and on this side we have a bunch of terminals. On the right side we have the power cable, and the remote turn-on wire, or the trigger wire, and the grounding point. There is also a 40 amp pre-installed fuse. Then on the left side there is the output speaker connections. From here you can see the diagram that they recommend. But you can also go a few other ways. If you're running a sub and 2 speakers, you will run your wires like this. You can also add 4 speakers and a sub by running them like this, but you lose some other features. Or just run the normal 4 speakers like this. On the other side of the amp there is some sound inputs, which has 2 sets of RCA cables. However, if your car's head unit does not have RCA outputs, you can plug the wires into the high input plug using the included connectors. And lastly, there is a power indicator and all the tuning settings. We can start this build by lifting the bonnet and disconnecting the negative terminal on the battery. It is always a good idea to remove the negative terminal whenever you are working on electronics so there's no power running through the car. I plan to run the power cable from the battery all the way over to the grommet on the passenger side. Now we can grab this power cable from the wiring kit and connect it to the positive terminal on the battery. Now it's a good idea to connect the fuse to a spot that is easily accessible and close to the battery. So I'm attaching mine on the side of the existing fuse box with some extremely strong double-sided tape. Next we can make a hole in the grommet and feed the power cable through, then go inside and pull it through. My grommet came out, so I just reattached it. I'm installing my amplifier under the passenger seat, so I'm going to push it all the way back and remove these little covers on the side so we have access to the bolts. Now lock on the handbrake for this part because we are going to remove our trim pieces to gain access to our head unit. Most of these pieces unclip with a little bit of a pull, but do be aware there's a few screws hiding in the corners. When a few more screws are removed, we can pop off the rest of the center console and remove the hazard light connector. Now I'm trying to make this a very neat install, so I'm hiding all my cables and I have them around and under the trim pieces. Okay, so the power cable has been run. It goes from up there into there, goes behind this panel, and so it doesn't rub on the seat, I've actually put it up into here, and it heads down there. And it goes into the back. Now, not too happy with how that looks at the moment, so I may just have to fix it up a little bit more. But as you can see, I've got a lot extra power cables, so we can chop that down in just a minute. So here we have our stupidly long trigger wire. It's about 5 meters long, which actually probably isn't that bad. But it is long for what I'm going to use, so I may end up having to cut it down. But anyway, I've also attached this little connector on the end here, because that's going to fit right into our connector the back of our head unit, which is our remote turn-on wire. So, plug it in there. Now we're just going to run all this wire back around with all the power cable. So after running it down the same path as the power wire, we're going to attach the grounding wire, and this just needs to be attached to any bit of metal that connects to the car's main body. I'm using a seat bolt as my grounding point. Okay, so I've got 4 lots of speaker wire here with all their 2 cords, so 8 wires all up. They're all running about 2.5 meters, so I've got 10 meters total here. And what I've done is I've labelled both ends with where I'm going to put the wire. So back left, back right, front left. So now we're going to run this along the opposite side to where we run the power and the trigger wire. You don't want your speaker wires with your power wire because it can cause interference. So let's do that. Running the cables along the opposite side of the power wire, I used a panel tool to help me get under those trim pieces. Now I did have to loosen up this panel with the 2 screws, a Torx bit at the back and a Phillips at the front. Then I just hid the wires above the footwell. Now here comes the scary part, chopping wires. In most cases, the purple, grey, green and white wires are your speaker wires. Now keep in mind, I'm not chopping the factory wiring. I'm using a $10 connector that I had to get when I changed over my head unit. Now once the wires are connected, you can strip them back. Normally the purple wire is for the back right speakers, green is for the back left, grey is for the front right, and white is for the front left speakers. With the wires connected, you can solder them together and shrink the heat shrink. And once you have done that, your new speaker wires are all connected to your speakers. Now you can feed your RCA cables into the dash and attach them up. Once again, you want to label the front and the back on both sides so you don't get confused. This is the mount I made, and when we attach the amplifier, we can install it into the car. Using that 16mm socket again, I'll remove the seat bolts and slide that amp under there. Then I can reattach the bolts, and then just connect all the RCA cables. Now because full gauge wire is used for the power and the ground, that is a very thick cable, and all the connectors are a little bit smaller, so I had to get these ring terminals and file the edges down just slightly so they fit the amp's connections. Then I attached all the speaker wires with ring connectors and reassembled the dash, and then we're all done. So that's how you properly install an amplifier in your car. Now, although I did properly install it, I also properly took it out. Now you may be wondering why I did that. It's mostly because I wasn't very happy with it, and because I only have my stock speakers in here, is a very high chance of me blowing them. So I do like my music very loud. And that's not to say I won't ever put an amplifier in here, I'm just not at the moment. I will want to upgrade my speakers, I'm just not sure when I'll do that. So that's the end of the video, I hope it was helpful. Leave your questions down in the comments and I'll do my very best to answer them. Next week we're installing some gauges into my Commodore, so stick around for that one. Make sure you head over to my Instagram for a sneak peek of everything that I post, because I post photos of everything before I make it a video on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for watching, I'll see you guys next time.